Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was teleported to the DxD world and became the first boy at Kuoh Academy? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Laying on sloped grass were three boys looking up at the sky with only one thing on their minds. Man, I want to fondle some. I can agree with that. Fondle some big, soft, beautiful. The three boys were Matsudo, Motohama, and Issei Hyodo. These three are students of the prestigious Kuoh Academy, a school that was once a private all-girls school that was converted into a co-ed school only a few years ago. They enrolled in this school as freshmen when they figured that the ratio from male to female would be massive. Matsuda, Motohama, why did we enter this school as freshmen? Motohana adjusted his glasses as he spoke. What kind of question is that? You know why. Issei jumped to his feet and pumped his fist in the air as he shouted out, to get our very own harem. The three were posed as if they thought they were cool with Matsuda shouting out, hell yeah, we were going to have unprotected with hot chicks and then never call them again. How is he not in jail already? A group of girls that were in the middle of a training run passed overhead, which caused the three to stare at their asses as if their eyes were magnetized to them. Issei then slumped as he said, so many girls in this school, and not one of them want to be with us. Why? Motohana adjusted his glasses again as he gave a sort of lecture to the question. It's because our enemies are strong. Like Kiba Yudo from class 2C. He has one of the highest marks in his class, he has the looks of a male model and is like the Prince Charming of all the girls here. Matsuda grit his teeth. Oh, I want to beat the crap out of him and see if any girl wants to be with him after that. Issei fell to his hands and knees with an aura of depression at hearing this, just because he is hot, sexy, cool, so much smarter and so much better than us, he gets all the and he wants. As if the world wanted to mock them, Kiba walked by with a couple of girls asking him if he wanted to join them in karaoke. He respectfully declined their offer as the girls swooned over him, and for some reason, he seemed to have sparkles around him as if he came out of a fantasy. Seeing this scene caused the three to silently curse his very existence. Issei slammed his fist into the ground. If only he didn't transfer here, we would get all the. Motohana adjusted his glasses again. He does that a lot. No, you're wrong. There is another. The other two boys looked at him in confusion before they remembered the other popular boy. Even if he was popular for a slightly different reason. School building, second floor. He was facing off with the biggest challenge he ever had. He had faced off with Hunter Nin, bloodthirsty bandits, a sadistic Sanin, and against a massive Kyuubi, but now he had nothing against what stood in front of him. How the hell did Sasuke even deal with this kind of thing? 16-year-old Naruto had a bead of sweat as he took a step back from the dreaded horror of some men, fangirls. And not just fangirls, a fangirl mob. And standing at the front of it was one of his biggest antagonists, Ika Kiryu. Ika had brown hair tied into pigtails that fell to the side of her head, golden yellow eyes that were framed by red-rimmed glasses. He didn't know why, but she seemed to find enjoyment in tormenting him by harassing him every chance she had. In fact, she usually set up these mobs to chase him all around the school. He remembered the mobs back in Konoha that would attack him if they caught him, but he felt like if these mobs captured him, he would lose something other than his life. At it again, Ika. Oh, first name basis are we? She smiled coyly at him as she crossed her arms under her bust. I didn't know you loved me so much, nah, Ru, too. This girl is going to be the death of me. He tensed his muscles as he got ready. What makes you think that you and your crew are going to get me this time? Her smile was almost sadistic as she brought her hand up to cup her cheek. You can't get away from us forever. Those whiskers will be ours. She had a glint in her eyes that said that she was about to begin. Naruto saw that glint and got ready. She brought her hand up. He shifted his foot. The girls moved their dominant foot forward. And it began. Let's get him, girls. Naruto turned and ran. Catch me if you can. Why do I have to challenge them to this? Because deep down you enjoy the attention. I don't need your input on this too, Chan. And so the chase began. Something the teachers had gotten used to at this point, since this became a common occurrence ever since he had arrived. Besides, the girls know to behave when they have to, so it was okay for them to have a little fun with this chase. Besides, it was thanks to these chases that the girls grew more physically fit, since they never caught him and they would always try again sometime later. Back with the perverted trio, Issei was now in a fetal position as he cried, "With those two at this school, we'll never get any." Motohana patted his shoulder. It's the sad truth. He also had tears coming out of his eyes. Matsuda, however, looked at his watch. Oh crap, it's almost time. The other two boys looked at him in confusion as they asked at the same time, "Time for what?" Matsuda looked at his friend and smiled as if he had suddenly been fused with a chimp. "I found the perfect spot to watch the of the Kendo Club." Issei suddenly realized something when he heard the word club. Oh crap, that's right. The swimming club. We gotta go if we want to see them get all wet. Matsuda shook his head. Come on man, we already spied on them. It's time for something new. Motohana nodded. I have to agree with him. There are many choices of and out there. We must appreciate all types of them. Issei was conflicted as he agreed with them, but he felt that they should stick with what they had. Shaking his head, he stood resolute. I will stick with the wet. You guys can go enjoy the Kendo Club. We can compare later. The three nodded as they went off to their destination. Back with Naruto. He was now stuck between a rock and a steel wall. Behind him was the mob of fangirls that would do anything to get their hands on him and his face, while in front of him was another one of his antagonists in this school, Akeno Himehime. Era, so excited to see me that you ran straight into my arms. Naruto looked at one of the so-called school beauties. She had been one of the people he thought was in a manner like he used to be in his very early years. Someone that hid pain behind a mask, but unlike him, she never dropped it. When he became a genin, he stopped caring about keeping up a smile. He would do what he wanted, and if the villagers didn't like it, then they can shove off. But from what he saw and felt, Akeno still held onto her pain and hid it every day. He could feel her self-loathing, and it bugged him that she had such a thing, since from what he could tell she was a nice girl, albeit extremely sadistic. Though whenever she would chase after him, at a much lesser degree, she seemed to enjoy herself a bit and almost forget her self-loathing. This was an issue with him to a small degree, however, because she was much more forward to what she would like to do with his face. Yufufu, why not fall into my arms so I can protect you from the evil girls after you? Afterwards, we can have some alone time. She licked her lips as she spread out her arms as if he would jump right into them. Naruto was stuck. Mob behind him, sadistic girl in front of him. Now what? If you weren't so keen on staying hidden, you could have gotten away already. Can't. That girl that smells like cats has chakra. Yusaka told me that she hasn't sent anyone to check up on me, so she could be from someone else. With her following me, we can't let her know that I have chakra. The seals I put on me, Ino and Hinata, are keeping us hidden, and I would like it to stay that way. Che, your choice. Naruto looked back and forth and saw that they were closing in on him. Aika had a gleam in her eyes as she saw victory and those whiskers coming ever so closer. You can't get away from us this time, Naruto. Naruto was now panicking until he saw his salvation and made his choice. You'll never take me alive. And he ran towards the side and jumped out of a conveniently open window. The girls gasped at seeing him jump from the second floor and all ran to the window to see if he was alright. Instead of seeing something gruesome, they watched as he flipped in the air until he reached a tree, stretched out his arms, grabbed a branch, spun around at once, let go, did an acrobatic air spin, and landed on his feet as if he was in the Olympics. Naruto got out from under the tree, looked up, and did a showman's bow. The girls all cheered and applauded at the display of acrobatics as they watched him walk away. Aika clicked her tongue. You win this time, Naruto, but I will claim those cheeks of yours. Akino watched the boy leave and licked her lips. You are becoming more delicious the more I watch you. She decided that she would go meet with Rias as she was to meet with her and Sona. Naruto brought his hands up behind his head as he thought about what to do for the rest of the break. He made his decision and decided to go meet up with Hinata. With Issei. Issei was hiding in the bushes next to the fence that surrounded the pool. He couldn't help but drool at all the girls that were swimming in skin-tight swimsuits that showed off the figures of all the girls there. His attention would always go to the girls that pulled themselves out of the pool, and he could see the drops of water slide off there, and his eyes traced the path of some that moved slowly to the side. It wasn't until he caught sight of one of the beauties of the school. He could not help but watch as she took off her swimming cap and her long luscious hair swung around her. She had a figure that rivaled Rias Grimori and Akino Himehime. Her personality would make any guy fall head over heels for her. Her shy nature would just want you to sweep her away as if you were her knight in shining armor, and her eyes looking the way they do make you want to just hold her hand and guide her around despite that she is able to see. Hinata Hyuga, one of the beauty queens of the school, despite her always having lavender skin-tight bands on her wrists and ankles, she was one of the pinnacles of beauty to the boys. Issei wanted to shout out and scream in joy at seeing her come out of the water, but he did not want to get caught. Steam came out of his nose as he enjoyed the sight of her as they bounced a bit as she walked. This show is just about that, isn't it? Oh man, I'm so happy to be born a guy. All hail. Enjoying the view. Issei didn't look back when he heard the voice and harshly whispered, "Shush. Do you want to get caught?" It took him a few seconds to recognize the voice. He would have turned his head to see the owner of the voice, but he suddenly felt pain around his head as fingers dug into his skull. Oh wow, let go. Oh, I will, but not here. All the girls of the swimming club all stopped as they heard the shouts of pain and looked over to see Naruto gripping Issei by the head. Instead of the girls screaming out that a pervert was spying on them, they felt embarrassed that one of the two princes of the school was here and had sight of their bodies. Hinata noticed this and puffed out her cheeks a bit. She may be used to the attention Naruto got, but she would still get fits of jealousy. She looked at Naruto and saw that he was smiling at her. She smiled back at him and blushed when he winked at her. The wink caused some of the girls to swoon as they thought that he winked at them. It was one of the reasons they swooned for him. Despite actions like that would cause them to think he was just a creep, it is when they actually confronted him that they saw he was extremely shy and self-conscious when surrounded by girls. They thought it was appealing and adorable. His whiskers helped in that fact as well. They watched as Naruto dragged one of the perverted trio away by his head off to who knows where. Meanwhile, Matsuda snuck through the bushes towards his peaking spot with Motohana right behind him. Come on man, it's almost time for them to change and we don't want to miss those beautiful of Murayama. Don't forget those luscious legs of Katase. Matsuda nodded as he got to the hole that led into the changing room for the kendo club. He waved his friend over and they both looked through the hole to see the kendo club walking in. Oh man, here we go. Motohana brought his finger to his lips in a shushing motion. Shush, you don't want them to hear us. Both boys had their eyes wide as they saw the club getting ready to take off their uniforms. Come on, just a little more. Suddenly both of their eyes felt immense pain as they pulled back from the hole and held their eye as they shouted in agony. Arg, my eye, my eye. Motohana was rolling on the ground as his glasses fell off his face and showed that the lens had a small hole in it. Thankfully no glass entered his eye, but as he grabbed what was thrown into their eye he saw that it was a small piece of an eraser. Wah! Inside the changing room with her arms stretched out that had a purple skin-tight band was a girl that had long blonde hair that covered her right eye, teal eyes that looked as if they belonged at a jeweler, and a figure that was the envy of many girls. This was another of the school beauty queens, Ino Yamanaka. Ino smirked at the hole as she knew they were there when they were coming to peek at them and was waiting for the chance to do that. Katase walked up to Ino and asked, "What was that, Ino?" Ino turned to look at the girl and smirked. That was a couple of perverts that got what they deserved. Hearing this, the rest of the kendo club grew angry and were redressing themselves in their kendo uniforms and grabbing their kendo swords to go out and deliver their own punishment before the perverts ran away. But much to their shock, someone else had come and made it easier for them. The perverts that were spying on them were tied to the practice posts with the third of the perverted trio with them in the center. Tying them up was the first prince of Kuoh, Naruto. Issei was struggling to get out of his bonds, but the rope was tight. Why the hell do you have rope anyway? Naruto finished the knot and straightened up and looked at Issei with his foxy grin. To tie up perverts like you. Issei wiggled more as he whimpered out, "Grr, damn it. You have your own harem, why can't you let us have ours? What makes you different from us?" Naruto, with his foxy grin still on his face, patted Issei on the head. "Because my head isn't always full of senpai. And I don't have a harem." Issei, Motohana, and Matsuda glared at him before shifting their gaze at the oncoming kendo club and the blushes they had as they saw him. "Yeah, right, you have half the schoolgirls after you." Naruto turned around to see the kendo club coming towards him and the other three. "Hey, girls, sorry for the disturbance." The entire kendo club blushed at the smile he gave them as Murayama spoke. "It's fine, Naruto. Thanks for getting them before they got away," she said as she did her best to hide her blush. Ino only sighed as she already got used to this, and knew that she couldn't do anything to stop it since she knew just how great Naruto was. Besides, she knew Naruto well enough to know that he would not ever cheat on her or Hinata. Though she couldn't help the little voice in her head that there might be some of these girls that might try and worm their way into his heart. But they would have to get through her first, not to mention Hinata. High walls for any other girl to try and scale. Naruto nodded as he looked at Ino. "By the way, nice shot, Ino." Ino her hip as she placed her hand on it and smirked. "Did you expect anything less?" Naruto chuckled and shook his head before he looked back at the three tied-up students. "Reminds me of the bell test." He put his hands in his pockets and chose that it was time for him to go. "Well, enjoy your practice, dummies." "Bye, Naruto," the kendo club said in unison before they turned to the three with evil smirks. The three began to sweat as Issei whimpered out, "Mercy." Screams of pain could be heard throughout the campus. Occult Research Club room. Rias, Akino, Sona, Tsubaki, and Kaneko were sitting in the main room of the Occult Research Club with Rias and Sona looking out the window towards where they heard the screams of pain. Rias was the first to speak. 3 years and nothing to show for it. "I don't know why we thought that there was something hidden behind those three." Sona adjusted her glasses as she nodded. "True, but I can't help but feel that we are still missing something about them, especially Uzumaki." Rias looked to Sona with a forlorn look. "I've had my peerage tail him all this time and so far he has shown no relation to the supernatural. From our observations, he is just a normal boy." "Ufufuf. Normal isn't something I would call him, Rias." Rias sighed as she looked back to her queen. "Okay, apart from being physically fit and acrobatic, we haven't sensed any power coming from him." She looked to Kaneko who was munching on a cookie. "And then there was that time you thought you felt chakra coming from him, which led me to believe that he was from the yokai faction sending in an agent to scout out the area, but you then said that it wasn't from him." Kaneko stopped munching on her cookie as she spoke in her monotone voice. "Felt chakra, he was in area." She went back to her cookie. "Yes. And you said he smelled like a fox." "Still smells like a fox, possible pet. But no chakra." Rias sighed in disappointment. "If he was a rogue yokai or had a sacred gear, I would have asked him if he would join my peerage." Sona looked to her friend. "Why don't you still add him? With his acrobatics, he could be a useful knight." Rias thought about it but shook her head. "Maybe, but for now, I need to focus on gaining an edge over Riser and I have someone in mind for that." Sona looked to Rias with a questioning look. "Oh? And who would that be?" "Issei Hyodo." Sona looked to Tsubaki for details of the boy and she went through his general info from his grades, status, opinions from other people about him. From what Tsubaki stated, there wasn't anything of interest about him. May I ask why him? Rias looked out the window. I have a feeling about him. Tsubaki was the one to speak next, much like Uzumaki. Yes, but unlike Naruto, I can feel something coming from Issei, which is a safer gamble on getting something more useful. Sona moved away from the window to stand by her queen. When will you recruit him? Soon. Sona knew Rias and knew how desperate she was about this and had an idea of what she was going to do. Rias, be careful. The method for you recruiting this time could very well come back at you. Rias sighed again. I know, but this is the most secure way that I would receive his cooperation. I will repay him later if I can. Sona nodded as she and Tsubaki began to make their way out. As she opened the door, she looked back. Oh, if you are truly interested in Uzumaki, I would suggest you recruit him soon. If you don't, I might add him to my peerage. Rias and Akino turned to face Sona with a look of surprise on their faces. Akino cupped her cheek as she smiled. Interested in our school's whiskered prince are we? Sona pushed her glasses up as she spoke. He intrigues me. He and those two he arrived with. They are a mystery, a puzzle that is impossible to solve, and I wish to know the picture they make once solved. She then chose to leave as she thought about her own findings of not only Naruto Uzumaki but Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga. Her findings were nothing. There was nothing about where they came from, no guardian's name, there wasn't even any record of any of them living before they arrived at the school. They were a complete mystery. At first, she had assumed that they might be from one of the other factions sent here to cause disarray. But after 2 years of observing them, it became less likely. Another thought was that they might be refugees running from a faction or possibly human issues. But their records were too scarce to follow up on that. It was like they just popped into existence. Who are you three? Back inside the occult room, Rias shook her head as she couldn't believe Sona's interest in the three. Sure, she would not mind having the three, but power is what she needs right now. She paused as she heard crunching, so she turned her head to see Kaneko continue eating her cookies. She then felt the need to ask, Kaneko, where did you get those cookies anyway? They aren't the ones we usually have here. Kaneko finished the cookie she had before answering. Naruto gave them to me, said it was a treat for a kitty. Rias and Akino looked at Kaneko in shock as Rias asked warily, did he know? Kaneko shook her head as she remembered when he said that. It had made her panic as well, but his action after that calmed her down. Kaneko reached behind her and pulled out a pair of fake cat ears. He put them on me, and walked away. The older girl sighed in relief while also sweat dropping at the actions of this odd boy. After school, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata were leaving the campus together as the two girls had finished their club activities. Normally Naruto would have a smile on his face as they left since he hated being in a school, but at the moment he had a scowl instead. Hinata looked at Naruto with a question gaze, is something wrong, Naruto? Naruto dropped his scowl as he looked to Hinata. He would have said that there was nothing wrong, but he knew that there were some unfriendly people in town. We have a problem. Ino and Hinata could hear the tone in his voice and got serious. Both turned to look forward as if nothing was wrong. Ino asked, what kind of problem? Naruto shook his head as, at the moment, the issue was not after them. The kind that I hope passes by. For a while now, I have felt a lot of negativity from several spots around town. I haven't looked into them, but the amount of greed and malice they have bugs me. Ino shifted her eyes to Naruto, and why haven't you told us about it? Because they haven't done anything. No attacks, no confrontations. They are just going about the town. I figured that if they aren't doing anything, then we shouldn't look for a fight. Ino and Hinata stared at Naruto as if waiting for one last thing to come from him. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed the back of his head, okay. I made a shadow clone at our house, placed concealment seals, and sent it off to follow one of them. They are holed up in that abandoned church for some reason and haven't moved for weeks. So why are you in such a mood right now? Because one of them is close. Ino and Hinata tensed up as if ready for a fight. Relax, they aren't coming our way or even moving. Hinata looked worriedly at Naruto. Shouldn't we go check it out then? Naruto shook his head. Remember, we are trying to keep a low profile. If we go off and attack them or if they catch wind of us, we would have to leave town again, and after all the work we put into the potential way home, it would be delayed longer. They were now in a park, standing next to a fountain as Ino and Hinata stopped, causing Naruto to turn and face them. Hinata sighed as she looked at Naruto. You have been working on a way home all this time with no time for yourself. We go to school, we go home, and you immediately go to work on that seal. You need to accept that we might not ever go home. Naruto shook his head at this. I can't stop. I made a promise that I would get you two home as soon as possible. Ino put her hands on her hips with a scrutinizing look. And what about you? Naruto looked at the two in front of him as he smiled. My home is where you two are. When you go, I go with you. Hinata stepped closer and placed her hand on his cheek as she looked at him lovingly. And what makes you think it isn't the same with us? Naruto's eyes widened in shock as his gaze shifted between the two. But what about your families? Your sister, Hinata. Hinata smiled as she got closer and pressed her lips on his. Breaking the kiss, she spoke. We know that they are safe, and even if we can't see them, we can still communicate with them. Our place is with you, Naruto. Hinata took a step back, which gave Ino the chance to step forward, gently grabbed his face, and guided his lips to hers. After a second they broke the kiss before Ino spoke. We know you will get us back to Konoha, but you can't just spend every bit of free time on it. Besides, they are working on it too, so relax. Naruto sighed. Fine, I will relax a bit, after the clone comes back from watching the church. Ino and Hinata nodded, with the former asking, so any idea on what these people want? Naruto shook his head. No idea. Only that they are waiting for someone to arrive before they do something. Hinata sat down on the fountain edge and asked, what about the closest one? Naruto could only shrug as he wasn't keeping tabs on that one. Don't know, but they seem to be staying there for the time being. Elsewhere. Will you go out with me? Issei couldn't believe it. This beautiful girl had just asked him out. What else could he say other than, of course? Watching the pervert and this disguised fallen angel was Kaneko, as she has been tasked with keeping tabs on the boy. Fallen angels. Target. Confirmed. Rias sat on the couch in the orc room with a chessboard on the table. She had heard from Kaneko that the fallen angels had made contact with Issei the previous day. This was both good and bad news. Good news because it meant that there might be something about Issei that had caught the fallen angel's attention, and bad news because she had no idea what they really wanted with the boy. She moved one of the chess pieces as Akeno looked over the board for her next move. Kaneko, do you know what they plan on doing? Kaneko shook her head. No, too far away, couldn't hear. Rias bit on her thumb's nail as she thought about what to do next. Her thought about sending someone in her peerage to watch them crossed her mind, but she wasn't sure how long she could keep them on the job. If she had more info about the interaction, she might have come up with a better plan, but due to Kaneko being too far away to hear what was spoken, info was lacking. She looked to her rook and asked, Kaneko, may I ask you to watch over Issei as long as you can to make sure that he remains unharmed? Kaneko thought about the request before she nodded. Okay. Akeno moved her bishop as she looked to her king before asking, would it not be wise to bring him into our fold now? It may save us from having trouble later on, as well as put him under our protection. Rias bit her nail harder as she reached out with her free hand. Yes, it would, but it would also alert the fallen angels that we are aware of them. I want to draw them out as far as I can before we make our move. She grabbed one of her pawns before moving it forward. As Rias finished her move, the door opened up to reveal Sona and Tsubaki waking in. Sona walked up to the three, nodding to Kaneko and Akeno before looking at Rias. I have some new information about Uzumaki that might aid you in recruiting him. Rias looked up to Sona with a smile, but it dropped when she thought about the boy. She shook her head. Thank you for bringing me information that may aid me, but it turns out that the fallen angels are making their move. Sona nodded in understanding, as she knew that invaders in their territory had a bit more precedence than recruiting a potential new member. Very well. I shall withhold this information for now, but may I ask what is it that you plan to do about them? Rias sighed as she leaned back on her couch. The fallen angels have made contact with Issei, but we are unaware of what they really plan to do with the boy. I plan on having one in my peerage keep an eye on them and be ready to jump in case something happens. Sona nodded in understanding. I still think that it is unwise in using him as bait to draw the enemy out. If something were to go wrong, you may lose said bait. Rias nodded. I am aware of that, but sometimes it is necessary to draw in the enemy to know their motives and remove them if necessary. Yes, but the bait is someone that is not part of the supernatural and a normal human. I would recommend that you take extra precautions when playing this game of cat and mouse. Rias nodded and suddenly felt the need to change the subject into something a bit more positive. What was the info that you wanted to give me about Naruto? Tsubaki stepped forward and answered for her king. She brought up a clipboard and looked over the info that they had gathered during the day. It came to our attention that he will be having an outing with both Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga this Sunday. This info was confirmed by several students that had heard the girls speak about this, with several other females asking if they would be allowed to join in the outing. From what you had said previously, from your observations of Uzumaki, he has never gone out to enjoy the town, and despite being invited to many different events, he had always said that he had an important task that he must do. We believe that if you are to run into him during this outing, you may be able to get close to the three and possibly learn more about him. Rias went wide-eyed at this. Throughout the time they had observed him, Naruto had never gone out to enjoy the city. Rias had thought about running into him while he was out, to meet with him and learn as much as she could. But not once had he ever been found out and about. Now here she learns that he is actually going to be out, and this information has been corroborated from several sources. Do you know what their plan is? Sona shook her head. Unfortunately, it was not stated where they would be going, only that they will be out for most of the day. Rias went back to biting her nail as she thought about what she could do about this. As Sona watched Rias think about her next move, she noticed the chessboard and saw what Rias was planning for the game. She had set up her pawn to bait in the enemy knight or the bishop in 2 moves. However, if either of them were to make a move to close in on it, the rook or king would be there to jump in. However, there was one more move the enemy could do that might cause issues. The enemy rook on the far side of the board could also make a move, but it would find itself set up as well, but in a different manner. Meanwhile, Naruto was laying on the couch trying not to eye the large seal that he had been working on for so long. He had promised Ino and Hinata that he would take a break from it, and now he was trying his best to take a break. He lifted his head when he heard the bathroom door open. He saw both Ino and Hinata come out clad in towels wrapped around their body and head. Ino and Hinata looked to see Naruto laying on the couch as they made their way to him. Hinata sat by his head before lifting it and placed it on her lap. She smiled down at him before she ran her hand through his hair. What are you thinking about? Naruto smiled up at Hinata as he answered her question. Just trying to calm my mind so I don't think about the seal. Ino leaned on the backrest of the couch and looked down at him. It shouldn't be that hard, Naruto. Why don't you think of something more entertaining, like the news that spread throughout the school today? Naruto sighed as he remembered what he heard during the school day. Honestly, I wouldn't have believed it if it wasn't for the fact that when he kept spouting out that he got a girlfriend, I felt that he wasn't lying. Who would have thought that someone like Issei would get a girlfriend? Hinata stopped running her hand through his hair before she flicked him on the nose. Naruto, anyone can find someone to be with. Despite his eccentric behavior, he also deserves to be with someone. Ino nodded before she made a face. He is the more tolerable of the 3 perverts. The other 2 would need someone very desperate to be with. Hinata looked at Ino with a reprimanding look. Ino, Ino brought her hands up in surrender. Okay, they can find someone too. Unknown to her, the sudden movement of her surrender caused the towel around her to loosen before it fell off, leaving her bare to the other two. Naruto's face turned red as he turned his head to look the other way. Ino felt the loss of her towel before looking down to see that she was now exhibiting herself to them. She smiled as she saw Naruto's reaction before she picked up her towel and wrapped it around herself. She then moved around the couch until she was in front of it and stood over Naruto. She then bent down and turned his head to look at her before she brought him into a passionate kiss. She caressed his whiskers, causing him to purr into the kiss, which made her smile. She pulled away and smiled at him. You need to stop getting so embarrassed when stuff like that happens. We live together, so it only makes sense that it would happen at times. Even Hinata doesn't blush like that, as often. Naruto, in all his maturity, stuck his tongue out at her. I can't help but feel embarrassed. It's just how I react. Ino gained a coy smile as she said, oh, and you laying your head on Hinata's bare thighs isn't something to be embarrassed about. Naruto felt his blush darken as he grabbed a pillow and covered his face with it, which caused the girls to giggle. Sunday morning, Kaneko was in an alley just outside of Issei's house, keeping an eye out to make sure that she would be able to keep an eye out. She had arrived only 30 minutes ago and looked at her phone to see that it was 8:30 in the morning. She kept eyeing the window that led into Issei's room, and for some reason, she had a sinking feeling. Especially since the shades were open, and despite it being the weekend and someone like Issei would sleep in, the sun should have caused some sort of movement. She was brought out of her thoughts when she heard the front door open and out walked the parents. She took a step back into the shadows of the alley and used her hearing to hear what they were saying. Issei's mother and father had a smile on their faces as they came out and discussed the progress their son had made. Miki was beaming as she gushed over it. Can you believe our useless son had finally found a girl that actually wants to be with him? Goro nodded as he cried happy anime tears. Our boy might finally gain some worth in this world. After he wiped his tears away, he looked to his wife. So did he tell you where he is taking Yuma today? Miki shook her head. No, he didn't say anything, but he was so excited when he left that he almost forgot his cell phone. Goro shook his head. Hopefully she will become a very good influence on him. True. Kaneko went wide-eyed as she heard this. Oh no. In town. Rias was walking around town looking for her targets, but she had no idea where to start. Throughout the week, she had tried to see if she could hear anything about their outing, but they were very tight-lipped about it. This didn't deter her as it was still morning and she had all day to find them. Suddenly her phone began to ring. Picking it up, she saw it was Kaneko and answered it immediately. Kaneko, what's wrong? Issei already left. He's on a date. Rias stopped in her tracks as she realized what this meant. They had no idea where Issei was or where they were going on the date. There were many issues with this, as they could have taken the train to go to the next town over, or they could still be in this town. If she could pray, she would for the latter. Kaneko, call everyone and have them search for Issei. What about you? Rias bit her nail before she answered, I will still look for Naruto. This could be the only chance to get Issei, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata. But Issei needs to be found. He is the one that has the fallen angel's attention, so he is the one at risk. Got it. Rias hung up the phone as she sighed. I hope they find him. She began to power walk now as her nerves were now getting worse. And I hope I can find them. Meanwhile, Naruto was gripping his seat as tight as he could as he was doing his best not to run away. He whispered out in fear, don't go in there. Don't go in there. No. He bit down on his shirt to muffle his scream. The three shinobi were at the moment in a movie theater watching a horror movie. But not just any horror movie. It was one that had ghosts in it, and Naruto had a major fear of ghosts. Ino was doing much better, but she had gripped onto Naruto's sleeve as she had a mild fear of the paranormal. Hinata, however, was enjoying the movie as she had no fear of it. She munched on a cinnamon bun. It was one of the reasons that they went to this theater. They sold cinnamon buns at the snack bar. Naruto muffled out a silent question, why are we even watching this? Hinata, who was sitting on his right, looked at him with a smile, because we felt you needed to relax and there were a few movies that we wanted to watch. Yeah, but why this one? Naruto went white as he heard someone in the movie steam. Kurama couldn't help but scoff. Coward. He went back to watching the movie through Naruto, enjoying it very much. Elsewhere, with Issei. Issei was walking with Yuma as they began their date. They had breakfast at a diner before since it was early and now they went off to their next destination. Issei put his hand in his pocket and felt the slip of paper that he got from a bat cosplayer on the street. He thought that the flyer was odd since it didn't really have much on it, but he kept it for no particular reason. He looked to his right at his girlfriend and couldn't help but smile. His smile grew when he felt her grab his hand and began to take him where she wanted to go. She is amazing. Later, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata walked out of the theater as they had finished the last movie. Naruto stretched his arms as he didn't usually sit in one spot for so long. Sure, he spent a lot of time on the seal, but he would usually walk around it so he didn't feel stiff. But this was a movie marathon. Finally out of there. I didn't think we would be spending all day in there. There were so many movies and most of them were good. I liked the last one. Hinata finished a small cinnamon bun that she bought when they decided to head home. If we ever get the chance, we should find a picture of the moth one and send it to Shino back home. Ino shivered a bit as she thought about what Shino was most likely to do, make more. But shook it off before she spoke. I'm sure that if we tell him that we found one in this world, he would want us to send him a couple so he could breed them, or he would want to come over here so he could see it in person. She then looked to Naruto. And why am I not surprised that you like the one with big monsters on it? A reference to Fox in the Leaf. Early on in Ino's life, she fell into a beehive, so she has a fear of swarms. Hinata smiled as she was wiping her hands with a handkerchief, maybe because he has had to deal with one all his life. Kurama heard this and scoffed at this as he put in his 2 cents. Even if Naruto was the only one that could hear it, Che. All those monsters are nothing but lightweights. None of them could hold a candle to us Biju. Though I did think that 3-headed one was interesting. Naruto's sweat dropped at this. Really? You like the one that isn't called the king of the monsters? And you seriously need to stop comparing everything big to yourself. We get it, you're huge and powerful. Stop bragging, 2-chan. Ino and Hinata saw the far-off look that Naruto had and they knew that it meant that he was talking to Kurama. Hinata let her curiosity grab her as she asked, what did Kurama say? Naruto looked to his girls before saying, he is just bragging again, saying that the king of the monsters wasn't as big or as powerful as he or the other Biju are. Honestly, I think he just likes to think of himself as unstoppable and is inflating his ego. Hey. The girls giggled at this as they began to make their way home. Ino looked to Hinata as she asked, which one was your favorite? Hinata thought about the movies that they had watched and answered, I like the one with the dragons. I really like how they gave the perception of each side from the dragons and their new riders. Ino nodded before she gave her answer, I like the one with the father and son finding their way through the hardships life gave them. Sure, it made me cry, but to be able to get the job that brought them out of their tough times. She then looked to Naruto, what about you? Naruto thought about the movies they saw and spoke, well, apart from the last one, I like the one with the showman. A band of misfits finding a home like that. It was a good movie, not to mention the songs they had. The girls nodded as they continued on their way home, discussing the movies they had watched. Naruto then suddenly stopped walking and turned his head to his right. Ino and Hinata noticed this and grew concerned, what is it? Naruto narrowed his eyes at the direction he was looking. One of the negative emotions I had been feeling just became malicious. He looked to the girls with a dead serious expression, whoever it is about to do something bad. The girls understood what he was implying and grew serious as well. Naruto led the girls into an alley so they wouldn't be seen before all three vanished, with Naruto leading them to where he felt it was coming from. The three shinobi moved fast towards the feeling, and Naruto was glad that they had the concealment seals on them. Although he wished he had made them stronger so they could go full speed, but he never got around to doing that since they never needed it. If it weren't for the fact that they needed to stay hidden, they would have arrived already. They made it to the park with Naruto barely catching a glimpse of someone with black wings flying away from the area. He wanted to follow, but a smell caught his scent. Blood. Looking ahead of him, he saw that someone was laying in a pool of blood next to the fountain. Shit. He led the two girls to the body, and to his shock, he saw that it was Issei. He turned to Hinata and Ino. Can you save him? Both girls moved to each of the dying boy's sides, with Ino using medical jutsu to scan and attempt to heal the hole in his torso, as Hinata did the same while also using her Byakugan. Naruto looked towards where he saw the person fly off and grit his teeth. Looking down, he saw a few black feathers. He bent down and picked it up before taking a whiff of it. I've got your scent now, whoever you are. He turned to look at the girls and could feel their disappointment and sadness at what was happening. They looked at him and he didn't need them to say anything to know what they wanted to say. Damn it. The three shinobi were then surprised to see Issei lifting his hand and staring at it. Naruto moved forward to be in Issei's sight. Issei. Can you hear me? However, the brunette did not say anything to the blonde. Ino looked to Naruto. I don't think he even realizes we are here. Naruto sighed in defeat as he hated the fact that he couldn't save Issei. However, he did crack a small smile as he felt a bit of lust coming from the pervert. Even with his dying breath, he thinks of. Meanwhile, Rias felt like her red hair was going to become pink soon with all the stress she had in her body. Not only has she not been able to find Naruto, Ino, or Hinata, but her peerage had no luck finding Issei. For most of the day, they had stuck with trying to find both parties, but after a certain point, she had abandoned her want to find Naruto and his group and instead went searching for Issei. However, they had not found him either. Where is that devil's luck when you need it? It was then she felt that she was being called by one of the flyers that her familiar was sent to hand out. From what she could tell, it was an extremely desperate call. Due to how strong the desire felt, she felt that she could handle it quickly and go off to find the fallen angel along with Issei. She moved over to a secluded area before she activated her teleportation circle and honed in on the flyer. Back with Naruto. As the three sat there with the dying boy so he would not die alone, they were surprised to see something in his pocket burst into red light, causing them to cover their eyes. They saw that as it died down, a red circle appeared a few feet away from them and it caused them to be on alert. Naruto did not want to deal with whatever it could be, and being cautious about it, he sent out an order, hide. The three then disappeared just as a figure came from the circle. Rias turned around and saw who it was that called her, and immediately her mood dropped. One miscalculation was all it took to allow this to happen. Although she knew that this was a possibility, it did not mean she liked it. She knelt down to him and with a sad smile she brought her hand up. Not how I wanted you to join my peerage, as I wanted to avoid doing this as you die, but I suppose there is no other way. She summoned her devil wings, summoned her pieces, and began the resurrection process. Hidden in the trees of the park, the three shinobi watched as the redhead girl did something to the body. Ino and Hinata were confused about what was happening, but they turned their heads when they heard something break. Naruto broke off a chunk of the tree as he glared at the redhead. Both grew concerned before looking at the bands he had on his wrist and could see them light up, trying to conceal his chakra. Ino was the first to ask, Naruto, what's wrong? Naruto took a deep breath, but his eyes showed that he was still outraged as his pupils were still slits. I don't know what she is doing, but from what she just said, she expected someone to attack and kill him. Hinata gasped as she asked, are you sure? Naruto shook his head, not 100%, but based on the fact that she is feeling regret along with her words, she knew this would happen. He stood up from his crouched position on the branch as he spoke. Let's head back home. We are going to have to be wary of Rias Grimori. Hinata and Ino nodded as the three vanished from the park, not seeing the full ceremony Rias was doing. Naruto, Ino, and Hinata made it home with Naruto stomping into the living room and plopping down on the couch. He glared at the wall as he tried to calm down. Naruto. Naruto shifted his eyes up so that his gaze fell on Hinata's face, who stood in front of him. He couldn't keep his anger as he saw the concerned look Hinata had. He sighed as he leaned back on the couch. I'm fine, Hinata. Ino moved behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around his neck. You don't like what happened? He leaned back as he nodded. It's not just that. Issei may be a pervert, but he wasn't a bad guy, at least not as bad as his friends. Rias seemed to be remorseful about this, but it seemed like she wasn't that broken about it. It was almost like a part of her was okay with it. Hinata sat next to him as she thought of something. So what are we going to do about Rias? We need to keep tabs on her. She isn't human, that much is certain, but she wanted something from Issei and his corpse must still have it. Ino leaned down so her head was next to his. Why didn't you leave a clone with her and tail her as you did for all those other people? Naruto's glare returned. Because if I left a clone there, it would have attacked her straight away. We need intel, and at that moment I was not in the mood for being patient. The girls nodded as they were in a similar mindset, albeit much more toned down. Naruto got up and sighed as the day started out so well, until that event. Come on girls, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow I will leave a clone to tail her and see what her plan is. The girls followed Naruto to the bedroom, ready to put this day behind them. Next day, Monday. They couldn't understand it. They were there. They saw the body. They knew he had lost all signs of life, but there he was, walking through the halls as if nothing was wrong. The three were outside with Naruto just staring at Issei through an open window as the brunette was talking animatedly with his friends. Ino and Hinata nodded as they agreed with his lack of speech. Ino looked to Hinata and asked, we both came to the same conclusion when we checked him, right? Hinata nodded, yes. All signs of life were fading so fast that there was no way we could save him. Naruto sniffed the air to see if there was any scent of death, but no, there was no sign of such a scent. But there was a slight change to his scent. It was small and almost unnoticeable, but it was there. He just wasn't sure what it was. It was then that he focused on his hearing. He got a bunch of random chatter until he caught Issei's voice and focused on what he was saying. What do you mean that you don't remember about Yuma? Matsuda shrugged his shoulders as he said, I'm telling you, you never told us about this girl. Motohama adjusted his glasses. Perhaps you imagined this girl to the point that you believed she was real. Issei felt angered at this as he rummaged through his pockets. Are you kidding me? I know I told you about her. I even showed you a picture of her. Here. He pulled out his phone and began to go through it, only to find that Yuma's contact info and pictures of her were no longer saved on his phone. What the hell? It's gone. He thought about this as it just didn't make any sense to him. His eyes then suddenly went up to the top of the stairs to see the red-haired beauty queen, Rias Grimori, looking down at them. Rias looked at Issei and could see that he was doing far better. She began to walk down the stairs while keeping her stoic visage, but as she passed the three she shifted her gaze to Issei and smiled. Good, it looks like he has gone back to a normal life. I will have to meet up with him soon to tell him about what he has become. She continued walking down the stairs and off towards the clubroom. Naruto thought about the little interaction that just happened between Rias and Issei. Although it looked like Rias was acting her usual nonchalant persona, the regret he felt spike from her told him that she might have done something that she didn't want to do. Though this did help him in thinking that she had done something to bring him back from the dead. Hearing Issei's friend talk about going to his house to watch some porn before screaming out, "Banzai to Arrow," he lowered his hearing while sweat dropping about the pure perversion the perverts had. Who the hell would scream that out in school? He looked to the two next to him and was about to say something until Whiskers. Naruto looked to the side to see another rampaging mob lead by Aika that was after his whiskers. He whispered out, "Shit. Hinata, Ino, meet me behind the school to start our mission." And with that, he dropped his glare and began running with the mob of girls chasing after him. Hinata puffed out her cheeks in jealousy before Ino placed a hand on her shoulder. She huffed a bit before staring at the direction they went. They never give up, do they? Ino giggled at this before shaking her head. Even when we told them that he was off limits, they still tried their best to get to him. Even when we told some of them that he was dating us, most of the girls got even more enthusiastic in trying to catch him, especially Aika. Hinata looked at Ino with a look of defeat, and the ones who were told about that didn't tell anyone else. It was like they didn't want to add to their competition. Even the ones that thought he was a pervert like Issei and his friends soon went back to chasing him after they confronted him and he apparently bashfully spoke to them. Aika on the other hand was not deterred when she found out. She just grew more determined. Ino shrugged as she and Hinata began walking towards the building. "You should know as well as I that when a girl wants something, she will do her best to get it. And Naruto has this charm to him that I doubt he even knows he has. I mean, look at us." Hinata sighed again. "We didn't really try to resist that hard. We just decided and it all worked out. If you think about it, we did go through a lot for us to finally admit it though. I still remember how Naruto lost an arm trying to get to us before we were killed." Hinata looked around to see if anyone heard them as she pressed her hand over Ino's. "Ino, you know we can't talk about it here." Ino huffed through her nose as she didn't like the idea that they had to hide here, but she knew the importance of staying out of sight. Now more than ever, she nodded before they continued towards class so they could just wait for it to start. Rias walked into the clubroom as she sighed tiredly. "It's not like you to be this tired so early in the day. What's on your mind?" Rias looked up to see Sona leaning next to the window smiling at her. Rias shook her head as she moved to the couch and sat down. "To be honest, Sona, I don't know. I got Issei into my peerage, I saved his life and it seems he easily got back into his normal routine, but why do I feel like I did something terrible?" Sona's smile dropped as she figured that Rias might feel like this. Rias, peerage was made up of those who had troubled pasts and were brought in under specific circumstances. Issei, however, was brought in quite differently. You might be feeling guilty for using him as bait and it backfired. Rias steepled her fingers as she leaned on them. "I brought him back though. I fixed my mistake, but it still feels like something is going to happen. Maybe you're overthinking this. Maybe." Rias got up and began to undress so she could take a shower in the clubroom built-in bathroom. Sona looked out the window as she asked, "By the way, about Uzumaki." Rias paused her unbuckling her bra for a second before continuing, "Once I test Issei for his capabilities, I will think about Naruto." Sona nodded. "When will you inform Hyudo?" Rias was now fully as she walked towards the shower room. "Tomorrow after school. Everyone will be in attendance for it and we can add him to the club during that time as well." Sona nodded as she pushed herself off the windowsill and made her way out of the room. "I wish you luck with Issei, though I still haven't given up my opinion on Uzumaki." Rias turned the shower on. "I know. I most likely will allow you to have him as we found nothing about him in the years he has been here. A part of that rumor that he is dating both Ino and Hinata." Sona paused as she smiled good-naturedly. "It's hard to believe based on his nature. He doesn't seem the type to try and gain a harem like Issei and his friends. But then again, this just adds to the mystery of Naruto Uzumaki." She walked out of the room and off to the student council's office. Later that night, "Can I at least rearrange their minds so they won't be perverts anymore?" "No, Ino. You can't kill them, make them brain dead, cut off their balls, make them impotent or rearrange their minds." Ino huffed as she laid back on the roof the three were using to keep an eye on Issei. So far, it was turning out to be a waste of time since the first thing the guy did was head over to his friend's place and started watching porn. And frankly, she was bored. This is a complete waste of time. All they have been doing is watching that weird cosplay smut. How can they even find that stuff entertaining? Hinata shook her head as she sat with her knees up. Everyone has their preferences, Ino. Although Hinata looked as calm and content as ever, she was also finding this stakeout to be quite tiresome. Naruto would have been bored if it weren't for the fact that he was blushing in embarrassment since he could hear the moans and sounds that came from the videos that the three perverts were watching. He may not be able to see it, but he sure as hell can hear it. Can't they watch something else? Humans have a weird way of entertaining themselves. To watch such things when they could be doing something more entertaining. Oh, you mean like going on a rampage and destroying a few mountains? Quote. Maybe 3 or 4, you know we can't do that. Kit, we haven't had any chance of fighting anything. And no, your training doesn't count. Seeing you beat yourself and helping your mates become stronger cannot be considered a fight. Sigh. Yeah, we got much stronger, but the three of us haven't been able to test out our full strength. He was brought out of his thoughts when he felt Ino tapping him on the shoulder. He looked at her to see her pointing at the house. He saw that Issei was leaving and heading towards his house. Finally, I was really getting tired of hearing all those ohs and ahs. Let's go. The three followed in the shadows as Issei dazedly walked home. This was something the three noticed and grew confused about. It wasn't until Issei turned around to look towards a mother and daughter a good distance away from him. How can I hear them all the way from here? The three were stunned to hear that Issei had heard the little girl complaining to her mother about some candy she wanted. They knew for a fact that the people here cannot hear that well. They could because they had the training to increase their hearing, and channeling a minute amount of chakra into their ears helps as well, but Issei was normal. Or at least he used to be. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he noticed the boy change direction and was heading towards the fountain where he died. He was unsure how good Issei's hearing became, but he gestured to his two companions to pull back a bit so there was a greater distance between them and him as he whispered out, "Think he remembers he died there." Ino thought about it as they moved, possibly. During the day it didn't seem like he had any idea of what happened. It might be a suppressed memory that he has subconsciously forgotten, but if he is going back to that fountain, he might have an inkling about it. Naruto and Hinata nodded as they followed from a distance. Fountain. Issei walked slowly towards the fountain he remembered from his date with Yuma. This was where we had our date. I know it was real. I remember her hand intertwined with mine. Her smile when we went out for ice cream. He clutched his shirt as he remembered how it felt to have someone by his side, someone that didn't look down on him or think he was nothing more than a pervert. It can't have been just a dream, could it? The three shinobi were hidden in the trees too far away for the girls to hear what Issei was saying to himself, but Naruto could. Naruto shook his head. I don't know exactly what happened, but looks like this girl really left an impression on him. Hinata looked at him as she asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto sighed. It almost sounds like he felt how I would feel when I'm with you too. Ino and Hinata now understood that the girl Issei was with meant a lot to him. Ino then gained an inquisitive look. Then there is more to this than we realize. This girl shows up out of nowhere, and then after Issei gets killed everyone forgets that he even said her name. The other two nodded with Hinata speaking up. It would seem that someone erased the memory of Yuma. But the question is, why were we not affected? Naruto thought about it for a second before he mentally asked, "Tu-chan, you got any idea?" Kurama opened one of his eyes since nothing of real interest was happening and he decided to take a nap. There was that small tickle that happened last night when all of us were asleep, but it was so small that it didn't even seem worth mentioning. Maybe that was a genjutsu that erased memories. You didn't say anything. Like I said, Kit. It was too small to even care about and it didn't even affect you three, so it wasn't worth mentioning. Naruto was brought out of his mental conversation when he felt one of the negative beings he felt throughout the city suddenly appear in the park and a weird sensation overtook him. He looked to the girls to see that they also felt it. He looked toward Issei to see that he wasn't alone anymore. Not good. Ino, Hinata, circle around him in case he tries to flee. I'm going too. He paused as he saw Issei make a leap that should not have been possible for him. Okay, now I know something is up. Girls go. Ino and Hinata disappeared from his side as Naruto made his way closer. So you are running away. Issei panicked as every fiber of his being told him to run away from this trench coat wearing man. What the hell is going on? And he turned and ran. Naruto turned in the same direction of Issei as he followed from within the forest. Okay, he is slightly faster now. He then felt the malicious intent coming from the stranger, and the interesting thing was that it was coming from above Issei. Looking up, he saw the guy with black feathered wings and his mind immediately went back to the previous night. Issei ran away as fast as he could to get away from the random guy. What the hell is going on? Who was that guy and why do I feel like I shouldn't even be near him? He saw black feathers begin to fall from above him and he remembered that Yuma had the same kind of feathers. Looking up, he expected to see her, but instead, he saw the man looking down at him. He stopped in his tracks when the man landed in front of him. The man looked around to see if there were any other signs of devils nearby and was intrigued by the fact that there was no sign of anyone else, no master, no comrades, which means you are nothing more than a stray. He brought up his arm to the side and summoned a light spear, easy prey. Issei turned and ran in fear. If this is a dream, then someone, wake me up. In his haste, however, he tripped and fell to the ground. Turning his head, he saw the man throw the spear at him, aiming to kill him. Someone, anyone, help! He shut his eyes as the light from the projectile grew closer. After a few seconds, expecting to feel some sort of pain and not feeling anything, he thought to himself, was it a painless death or something? He could still see the light shine through his eyelids and took a chance at opening his eye, only to see the tip of the spear an inch from him. He screamed in shock and stumbled back from it before looking down at his body to see that he wasn't hurt. He looked back to the spear and saw that someone had grabbed it. Following the arm that held the spear, he saw who it was: Naruto. Naruto sighed in relief that he caught the spear. That was close. Thankfully the spear was moving slow enough for me to catch it. Even at that close of a distance, it was almost at a slug's pace. Better not ever mention that to Ba-chan. He looked at the down boy and gave his foxy smile. Hey, you okay? Issei was dumbfounded. Wah? How? When? The man was confused as well. How did I not sense him nearby? Who are you? Naruto turned and glared at the man. Give your name first and then I will give you mine. Damn, that sounded cool. I should watch more movies. The man smiled as he took off his hat and gave a gentleman's bow. I am DxD. Naruto gave a smile as he answered back. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Now, why don't you tell me why the hell you are trying to kill this guy? DxD placed his hat back on his head. A stray devil does not deserve to live if it has abandoned its master. This is the common rule that we all follow. Hearing what DxD said caused something to snap in Naruto. Devil, master. He gripped the spear so hard that it shattered in his hand. He glared hard at DxD before he said, Ino. Hinata. Before DxD could react, he felt something impact hard into several pressure points in his body and several slashes on joints of his body. He fell hard onto the ground and looked up to see two females, wearing the same uniform, glaring down at him with both holding their hands up with two fingers extended, although the brunette had her thumb pressed with her two fingers as well. How did I not sense any of you? Naruto moved closer to stand between the girls as he glared at the man. You should work on your sense better, but I doubt you will have the chance. He brought his fist up, ready to knock the guy out until a bright red light began to shine behind all of them. The shinobi turned around to see what was going on until they saw three figures appear from a red circle on the ground. DxD saw who it was and knew now that he was out of his league. Not only were these three unknowns here and were the ones that crippled him, but the red-haired girl that just appeared told him that the heir of the Grimoire family had arrived. I must flee. Luckier him, his wings were still functional and he used them to push himself off the ground and into the air. The three shinobi turned back in time to see DxD fly into the air and disappear from sight. Damn it. Danesik's voice then rang through the air, you almost had me and I commend you for that. I hope we never meet again. Naruto saw a feather fall from the air and swiped it into his hand. Taking a sniff, he knew two things now. 1. This was not the same winged figure that killed Issei before, and 2. He had the man's scent and would not let him get away next time. Rias knelt down to Issei and looked him over to see if he was okay. Are you alright, Issei? Issei was confused about what was going on. First, a weird man pops up out of nowhere to kill him. Next, his classmate and one of the most popular guys in his school shows up and saves him. Then two of the beauty queens appear and take the man down. And now the third and fourth beauty queens show up with the mascot of the school with the red-haired one looking him over, making sure he was okay. What's going on here? Rias sighed in relief that he was fine. She did not expect another attack from the fallen angels so soon, but she was glad that it didn't turn out to be another death. I promise I will explain everything to you. Why not do it now? Rias, Akeno, Kaneko, and Issei looked up to see the angry look of Hinata and Ino and the dark look coming from Naruto. Naruto took a step forward and spoke with anger clear in his voice, why not explain what the hell you are and what you did to him? Rias was a little taken aback by the attitude the blonde had. Not once has anyone seen anger in the blonde's face, and some even thought that he didn't even know how to be angry, but the look he had now showed fury he was holding. She took a breath as she stood up and stared Naruto in the eye, so I was right that there was something about you. Do not try and get out of explaining. He paused for a second as something came to him. So you can teleport. Rias was stunned to hear such a declaration. Yes, she and the other two teleported here, but to come straight to such a conclusion was of interest to her. How did you know that? Naruto did not grace her with an answer. He wasn't going to tell her that he had a clone watching her as she went about her business in the clubroom she uses and dispelled when the three disappeared in the same red light. He shifted his gaze to the other two that arrived with Rias and decided to push deeper into his advantage. So it was you that had Kaneko tailing me all this time. He saw the shock on Rias and Akeno and the slight widening of Kaneko's eyes. He looked at the petite girl and said, "You're not as stealthy as you think." Looking back at Rias, he spoke with authority, "Now answer my question." Rias knew that she had to explain everything not only to Issei but now to the three unknowns that had plagued both her and Sona's radar for so long. I will explain everything to you and Issei tomorrow after school. It is late and I wish to discuss some things with you as well. Naruto did not like the answer, but sensing no lie he took a few steps back till he stood with Ino and Hinata. You better explain everything since I hate liars. And with that, the three shunshined away. Everyone that remained there were stunned at the sudden disappearance of the three, and they looked around to see if they could get a glimpse of where they might have gone. Kaneko was the most startled as she said, "Chakra. They used chakra." Akeno and Rias looked at her in shock. So that time you said you sensed chakra and he was in the area meant that it did come from him. She then gained a question, how have they remained hidden for so long? Kaneko shook her head signifying that she had no idea. Rias could only sigh as things were becoming far more difficult. It turns out that her gut feeling was right when she thought that there was something about the three, but now it seems like it will take some extreme convincing if she wants to add them to her peerage. She looked down at Issei, who was still too stunned to say anything, and she brought her hand up for him to take. Issei, I know you are confused right now, but I promise to explain everything to you tomorrow. But right now, let's get you home. Issei took the hand and got to his feet, and they began to make their way towards his house. He was still so confused that it didn't even register in his head that he was being escorted by three beautiful girls.